Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and special guest host Koray Kose with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Hey, Koray, how you doing today?
Very well, sir. Yourself?
I am doing fantastic. I'm glad we got you between some of all your global trips. We got to track down your private charter here lately.
Maybe yes, but very soon I'll be traveling again for next week's conference in Amsterdam. So it's a good in between to meet you here.
It is. Well, it's great to see you as always. 2 weeks in a row. I've really enjoyed your perspective. And today, folks, it's The Buzz. You know this, where every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time, we discuss a variety of news developments across global supply chain and business. News that matters, as we like to call it. And folks, The Buzz is powered by our friends at EasyPost, who help make shipping easy, flexible, and scalable. You can learn how to simplify your shipping operations and delight your customers at EasyPost.com. We got a great show teed up here today. Koray, we're going to be looking at interesting workforce management polling data. We're going to talk about how AI is playing a role at optimizing the catch-up supply chain. Stay tuned to find out how and why. We'll explore if Europe may be falling behind in the global race to adopt AI. Can't wait to hear Koray's and our guest take on that. Plus, we're going to be celebrating Manufacturing Day 2025 as well as Manifest 2026 in Las Vegas. All that and more. And in about 10 minutes or so, we're welcoming back a special guest today on The Buzz. Katie Date with Manifest is back by popular demand. Koray, did you eat your Wheaties this morning? Because we got a jam-packed edition of The Buzz here today, huh?
That is right. And I think we're also looking into a very busy conference season. So it's just timely to have someone from Manifest joining us because, we blink once with our eyes and it will be February. So time is going to go really fast from now on.
So true. Goodness gracious. Almost in October already. So folks, stay tuned for a great show. And two things before we get going. Hey, give us your take in the comments, whether you're tuned in via LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch, no matter. Let us know what you think. Just like Leah Kim, who is tuned in this morning via LinkedIn from the greater Seattle area. Leah, you're up early and looking forward to your perspective here today. Because as Trisha says, happy Buzz Day. And for all you out there, let us know where you're tuned in from. We like to connect the dots. And then secondly, if you enjoy the show today, we'd love for you to share it with your friends, plural, and your network. They'll be glad you did. All right, Koray, we've got a lot to get to before our esteemed featured guest joins us. You ready to go?
Yes, let's go.
All right, let's do this. I want to start with our newsletter, our almost weekly newsletter we dropped over the weekend. Now, with that said, is what we call that, Koray, because I use that phrase about 37 times each day. Koray, I've got to stop it. But in this edition, we let off with a few interesting news stories. So get this. I'm going to rattle off some news headlines, and then I'm going to get your take, Koray. Up first, for the second time in less than a year, Canada Post workers go on strike. Boeing took another step forward in its continued efforts at a turnaround as the FAA is going to allow Boeing to sign off on some of its 737 MAX and 787 Dreamliner aircraft before delivery. Third, the White House announces new tariffs on all sorts of things, including imported heavy-duty trucks. Fourth, as we continue to track the EV manufacturer Rivian, the company posted some disappointing Q2 2025 results. And beyond all of those stories, right, we'd love to get your take on. We also shared a variety of live events, resources, you name it, including this session on October 21st with the one and only Deborah Dole, who's going to tell us and teach us how we can optimize our digital transformation leadership capabilities and capacity. How about that? So join us then. All right, so Koray, that's a lot of stuff, and then there's even a lot more. Did you get a chance to read With That Said on the plane ride back home this weekend?
I did. I actually very much enjoyed your call out on the Kraft Heinz pilots and what they're doing with their cookbook, which was an interesting take to bring a little bit of their company history, their core product closer to every employee to identify not only themselves with the brand, but also get acquainted with the capabilities of AI to bring them closer to actual catch-up production. So, which was almost like gamification, bringing like the curiosity in the organization to life within the context of AI. And I think that's an interesting way to bring that new technology closer to everyone in the enterprise.
Koray, I love that. And you know what? You're in luck because we're going to talk more about that story here in just a minute or two. And we're going to talk about those unwritten rules that no ketchup goes on hot dogs, folks. I'm sorry. That's how it is. All right. So, folks, check out With That Said. Give it a read. Let us know what you think. And by the way, we need to give our European friends a tip of the hat because they dominated the Ryder Cup. Yes, the American team tried to make it a little bit closer yesterday. It was a compelling day 3, but man, the Europeans were just dominant. They played incredible. Okay, Koray. 2 other things I want to hit before we bring on Katie Date. I want to talk about this incredible address that you had last week. I think you were speaking to a room full of global military leaders. Tell us more here.
Yes, this was with the European Center for Security Studies, or the George C. Marshall Center, which is based in Germany. And they do educate future military leaders, future generals in all contexts of global security, global technology, but now also, of course, global supply chain interdependencies for military and defense sector, but also really about the economic force behind those powers in NATO and the adversaries of NATO. So we were invited there to give a lecture of that specific interdependence of global value chains and the deterrence ability of NATO towards aggressions across the globe. And it was very interesting to see how now a couple light bulbs went really on in the room to think about why certain dependencies are in existence. Of course, for instance, from I call it the war machine that is still dominated by the US and its innovation. Think about F-35, F-22, but also, of course, the new drone capabilities that are outside of the US available, such as the developments in Turkey and their defense sector, very much also present in the news by President Erdogan visiting President Trump this past week and talk about F-35 deliveries, but also the engine deliveries for their own 5th generation fighter, for instance, that is 1/3 of the price and very close to the capabilities of the F-35. So there are a lot of things going on where supply chains impact national security capabilities. And we can see, of course, in the conflict, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia over the last few years, what actually nowadays warfare looks like, and that supply chains are critical as always, but even more nowadays when it's all about transformation with new technologies coming into our supply chains, especially from the security perspective. So that I was actually there with also Honorary Tobias Elwood, who was the Secretary of Defense and Foreign Affairs in the UK. He was there in person, present. I couldn't make it. I would have loved to be there in person, but I was there on the big screen. So I don't think I've ever been on a screen as big as that portrayed. So,
okay, look at that Hollywood shot. They can just about reach out and shake your hand. That's right. So big, but outstanding. And all that kidding aside, those are some critical topics. And I tell you, I really enjoyed learning from you all these so often this year. Folks, make sure you connect and follow Koray Kose on LinkedIn. Check out his articles in Forbes, you name it, because he's really talking about some things we need to wrap our head around for national security reasons and many, many others. And by the way, you're throwing out some model numbers there as a big Air Force geek. The F-47. I've read more and more about the development of the 6th generation platform. So we'll see. All right, folks, you can learn more about Koray Kose's keynote right there. Thank you, Trisha, for dropping that link. We try to make it really easy for everybody. And going back one, with that said, the link is right there to the latest edition. And we'd love to get your comments. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, you name it. Okay, one more thing. Koray, you know that we like to share resources with everyone out there on the buzz here. I want to share the latest from our friends at EasyPost, right, who's been sponsoring the buzz all month long. Folks, they've automated USPS claims processing to recover funds effortlessly. More things need to be effortlessly, including the pronunciation of effortlessly. Check this. Recover funds effortlessly for lost or damaged packages, covering up to $100 in built-in insurance. Best of all, there's a $0 upfront cost with an industry best 90% success rate, and refunds are credited directly on your account. Dive in to simplify your shipping and save big. You can learn more at easypost.com or the specific link that Trisha shared right there in the chat. Thank you, Trisha. Koray, Trisha is on it this Monday morning, huh?
That's right. So she's really the magician behind the scenes. So we're just here.
So true. So true. It's good to have a magician on the team here. All right. Speaking of magicians, and I bet Katie's bringing some easy buttons to today's conversation. Great guest, great repeat guest today here on The Buzz, powered by EasyPost. So Katie Date, folks, serves as Senior Vice President, Industry Relations and Strategic Initiatives at Manifest, which is one of the fastest growing quality supply chain shows around. Now, prior to Manifest, Katie spent almost a decade at MIT's Center for Transportation and Logistics. And while there, she launched the MIT CTL Women in Supply Chain Initiative to help organizations understand and improve gender balance in the field, which Katie continues to champion today. So please join me in welcoming Katie Date with Manifest. Hey, Katie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Well, we had such a great time about a month and a half ago with you and Kim. Had to have you back. And Koray, we got a lot of good stuff to get into with Katie Date, huh?
That's right. So really looking forward to learn more about the Manifest agenda in 2026. And of course, the location can't be beaten by any other location, right? So
that is right.
Yeah. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
As always, Katie, that's right. So big show here today. Let's start with a fun warm-up question, though. I got a little different one. It's National Coffee Day, by the way, Koray, but we talked about coffee last week. It's also National Goose Day. It's National Biscotti Day, which is tasty. And it's also National Silent Movie Day. Now, I've never watched a silent movie, but I want to use a vehicle to ask you both, what's been one of the best recent movies you've seen this year? And Katie, I want to start with you. Tell us more.
So I'm going to qualify it by saying that I have a 5-year-old. So the catalog of movies that I have watched over the past year definitely skews towards Disney. And I would say probably our favorite in our house this past year was going to see Lilo and Stitch 2 in the theater. Okay. So that was, a favorite of me in my childhood, and has a great soundtrack that we've listened a lot to, and he had a great time in the theater and can't wait till it comes out on Disney Plus so that we can watch it 5,280 times a day. So really looking forward to that.
Love it, and we can all relate to that so well. All right, Koray, it's gonna be a tough one to beat. Lilo and Stitch Part 2. What about you?
Well, we're on equal turf there, because my 5-year-old certainly dominates whatever consumption of television there is. So I had to stick to the same platform, Disney, for this. And I was forced to watch Moana 2, and Moana probably about 20 times by now. So it's the only movie I know by now. And but I like some quotes there. So the grandma seems to be quite smart, and she says things like, you never know where your story leads, but we never stop choosing who we are. So those blimps are there, and then I just go into reminiscing about everything else but the movie, and then I wake up when the movie is basically ending. But by now I know the ending and the beginning and the middle of it and everything in between. So that's the movie we're watching at home.
I believe it.
And another great soundtrack too.
That's right.
That's right.
I love these Disney movie soundtracks, by the way. I mean, incredible. I would just add Superman, Katie and Koray. Me and my son. My son's a big Batman fan. In fact, he takes Batman over Superman any day of the week. We have some fun arguments around that. But we both went, and Superman, the latest edition, gets 2 thumbs up from one very tough critic, Ben Luton. And it was just a great, my only qualm, Koray and Katie, my only qualm is the Superman March, which was iconic to the original series that John Williams put together. They use that in bits and pieces, but they don't really share in all of its triumphant glory. But that's a major minor quibble. All right, so everybody, you got your movies to go out and watch. Moana, Lilo and Stitch Part 2, and Superman. Let us know what your take is on each of those. All right, so Katie and Koray, we have got a lot to get into here today. Oh, we got one more movie recommendation. Alex says, highly recommend Bad Guys for your 5-year-old. I've heard good things about that. Alex, and great to see you here today. Have y'all heard about Bad Guys? Is it part 2 or is that the original?
I think there's a part 2 that's either just come out or is coming out soon.
Right. That's what I thought.
And there's a Bad Guys Christmas that we've had to watch in my house, I think, and also a Halloween one. So
okay. All right. Plenty of Bad Guys you've had, Katie. Okay.
yeah.
But Alex, great to have you here today. Let's dive into the first story. Katie and Koray. We are going to start with a few insights from LinkedIn's latest workforce confidence survey. Now, I'm going to unpack a few of these major findings, and I can't wait to hear Katie and Koray kind of comment on them. Nearly 7 in 10 U.S. employees say that they might leave their job if they had a bad boss. I don't think that surprises anybody, really. In fact, it reminds me of a great point made by my friend Bo Groover earlier this year when Bo said, your manager will have a greater impact on your overall health than your own doctor. Now, at first, that might not make sense, but the more you think about it, it makes perfect sense. I think it's very true. Also, back to the survey, almost 3 in 10 employees say their manager is often too stressed to support them. The survey found that only 30% of individual contributors want to become a manager of people. Hey, I'm with the 70% there. So a couple of things there might or may not surprise folks. Katie, your thoughts?
So I've definitely had good managers and bad managers in my past. And I feel like in supply chain particularly, you really feel the impact of leadership. If you've had a bad boss, suddenly, your decisions are dragging and you'll see silos start to grow and small problems, which, once were really easy to address, suddenly are, snowballing into big disruptions.
Yep.
But on the flip side, I've also seen leaders lift people up. Everything flows, teams collaborate, problems get solved faster. And, in supply chain, there's always surprises. So it's much easier to handle those surprises. And I personally think that leadership is the hidden gear in the supply chain that keeps things moving. So, at the end of the day, a boss can either be your biggest roadblock or your biggest accelerator. And in supply chain, that makes all the difference. And hopefully when you have good bosses, it makes you want to step up and, be that leader, and you can see how to do that, because truly that's what we need in supply chain right now are really good leaders.
Katie, well said. And it really makes you think, as you said, they're kind of paraphrasing a bit. Leadership can be a great advantage for your organization, or it can be a big detriment. Good stuff. Koray, your thoughts on these workforce trends we just walked through?
Well, I've seen, like Katie, probably the entire spectrum of leaders and managers. And the one that I most enjoyed was the ones that really embodied like servant leadership, that was assertive to the outside and empathic to the inside, and helps you to discover really what you are good at and supports that growth and where your interests lie. And if there is a gap, supports your development into that, but not necessarily nitpicking on everything that you're not doing right. And unfortunately, in tough times, they rather nitpick than develop. And then people really give the response that we see in the survey here. One thing in this context of 2025, though, we need to look at the mobility capabilities of those people that are saying that, because we're looking at a job market that is not really clear where it's going. Yes, is there opportunity? There's always opportunity, but there's not as much flexibility in the market. And we're seeing actually reactions also economically that, that mobility is not there. So the 70% is a bit worrisome, because it shows a bit of the frustration in the market of people being in a job, and that usually has an impact on productivity and friction, to be honest, that is subtle in the beginning, but then can come out very strong. So a lot of companies, especially in the tech space, when you monitor Glassdoor right now, you can see comments that are actually not that positive anymore. And they're talking about toxic environments in those startups and in those scale-ups. And that's not a good sign. And that means people are stuck too long in that environment and have these responses then that LinkedIn unveils. So my recommendation to any company out there that is in this space where you have scarce talent, but also non-mobile talent right now, care about your people, because they come front and center, and then the technology and then the process comes.
Koray, absolutely. We need to shout that from every mountaintop. Caring about your people and showing that you care it's table stakes And as you wrap there, mentioning technology, that's the coolest thing in my view about this golden age of supply chain tech that we're in, is those leaders that really get how to build a business case. And oftentimes that business case for AI or anything else, it's all about making it easier for your team members to find success each and every day by taking friction and tediousness out. So well said there, Koray. Katie and Koray, I wish we could just keep talking about workforce stuff between the perspective y'all both shared, but we got a lot more to get to. Let's go to Koray was doing some foreshadowing earlier and talking about ketchup. And by the way, the best ketchup in the world, folks. Don't let anybody fool you. It's not Hunt's. It is Kraft Heinz. So this is a neat AI case study impacting a key ingredient that accompanies delicious French fries everywhere. So CIO Dive is reporting on how Kraft Heinz is leveraging an AI agent to help provide their workforce with better access to information and best practices when it comes to producing their iconic ketchup. Now, they've created a tool called the Cookbook. Makes sense, right? And in 3 months' time, the company has built a platform that shares tribal knowledge from 150 years of ketchup production history at Kraft Heinz. They want to help their employees hone in on the right thickness, color, taste, you name it. And it seems like they're testing the cookbook with a small group of team members right now to see how effective it can be, to see how it moves the needle perhaps, and if impactful, they are talking about using it with other products. So, Katie, I know that big old bottle of ketchup makes us all want some French fries right about right now, but your thought on this application of AI?
Yeah, so like Koray talked about before, I love that this AI application is not about replacing people. It's about capturing that knowledge, that 150, years of expertise, and really putting it in the operator's hands real time. So, imagine, the person's, on the line and they can ask AI, why is this batch a little off spec? Yep. And they get that answer instantly. I feel like that's such a big step for supply chains, the ability to move from reactive and firefighting, which is, let's be real, that's the common case in the supply chain. And you can start to be proactive. You can start to have these insight-driven decisions by talking to AI. What I see, though, is a challenge in scaling it. You have to look at the data quality, legacy systems, and adoption. How can you truly adopt this? But, if they're able to get it right, I think this could be a great model for how AI can empower supply chain teams.
Katie, I appreciate that. And you make a great point at the end. At the end of the day, does it pass? Does it muster? No pun intended, maybe a little bit intended. The so what factor, right? Koray, you were already sharing a couple of your thoughts around this use case that CIO Dive wrote about. Your thoughts, Koray?
Well, I think it just follows the common trend, right? Last year, about 55% of companies utilized AI in at least one business function. This year, it's up to 78%. At the same time, though, you can look at those use cases and you only see that 1% in the specific use case that they're working on actually reach full maturity. So it's still on the playground in that context. So while this is fun to watch and interesting to see, it really needs to be two things. One, scalable, and then two, it has to have a business impact. And a lot of companies are struggling with that business impact. In that same article, you're seeing that actually a lot of companies are pulling back AI projects because of the lack of business impact, because the hype made everybody excited and excited about getting into the space, not too late. But literally, they went on this journey without knowing, what the target or at least the milestones were. So now they are drawing back to then come back even stronger. But I don't know if the comeback is really going to happen continuously, because the next wave is already coming even stronger at you. Right. So it's really the next 3 years will define if AI is going to stay and how much it's going to replace. But signs and signals are really positive in the context of increased productivity. There are numbers like $4.4 trillion going to be added in productivity just through AI. That doesn't mean that everybody is going to survive in their job as it is today, but it gives everybody the opportunity to discover something else that they can contribute in the value chain, because this is inevitable in that context.
Yes, Koray. And as we've kept it real for years now, Katie and Koray. Folks, if you're willing to learn new things and get out of your comfort zone and raise your hand and volunteer for projects and initiatives, you're going to love this golden age of technology. However, we got to tell you, if you want to do the same thing for 8 hours a day, every day, it is going to be a challenging time, right? And hey, but this is your opportunity to invest in yourself and really own your future. So a lot of good stuff there, Katie and Koray. All right, we're going to double dip. Double click, double dip, whatever your favorite analogy is, on artificial intelligence here today. Now, I'm going to give you a forewarning here. Folks, you got to go read this article from the World Economic Forum on your own, because it's tough to convey everything they shared, which is a great piece, in 10 minutes or so, 5 minutes, so that we're going to talk about it. So so Tricia is dropping the link, and you go check it out. So the World Economic Forum published this interesting piece here recently, where it states that that Europe is lagging behind the U.S. in AI adoption. It claims the U.S. is leading the AI race, followed closely by China, and that countries across Europe are a little bit further back. All of this despite the EU passing the world's first comprehensive AI law, which allows for harmonized rules and an AI code of practice. However, Stanford University reports that private investment in the U.S. alone reached over $109 billion in AI in 2024. That's 12 times the amount in China and 24 times the investment of the same private sector in the UK. Of all the European countries, some research, as the article provides, points to Denmark as being a trailblazer in the usage of AI, along with Sweden and Belgium. As I mentioned, there's so much more to this read, so check out the link in the comments. Katie, your thoughts when you see a headline and some of the research here?
Yeah, so, I've obviously, done a lot of work in Europe, setting up a center in Luxembourg. And what really struck me is that traditionally Europe isn't really short on ideas. It's always been traditionally a place that you go for innovation. But in this case, they're moving too slow, and in supply chain, speed really matters. It seemed like, from what I read, that they were, waiting too much on regulation before, testing the AI, and that's what's putting them behind. If I can give them any advice, I think they need to stop waiting to be perfect. Perfection often is the enemy of productivity, I think they say. And so I think for a lot of these companies, and obviously in Europe, government is very involved in industry. They need to start small and learn fast, and try to build from there. But it's concerning to see a headline list like this, and I'm interested to see what Koray has to say about this.
Same, Katie.
Yeah.
And I love that you've been there and worked a lot there, so you got a great valuable perspective. Koray, same for you. You're in Europe often, worked extensively there. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, calling out Denmark as a leader in Europe, looking at the map and the economic size of Denmark, it shows the irrelevance actually of AI in the European economy, to be honest. No pun on Denmark here. Yes. So I love Denmark and the Danish, right? So, but at the same time, you need to look what is actually the motion here. And the EU AI Act, as much as some people celebrate it, I was on the podium with one of the members of parliament of the European Parliament who was part of that AI Act scripture, and she said she hated the guts out of it because it really does not enable the development. What it does, it just is belts and suspenders everywhere, and literally just about the ethical coding and the usage of data, which yes is important, but it limits basically any development in context of an investment that would come in and help. And, when you think about how many AI models were put out in the last couple of years, 40 significant AI models came out of the US, around 12 from China, and only 3 from Europe, and those were from France. So you can see there's a 10, 15x difference of models that are brought to market. Not all of them are good, but at least there is trial and error, and that's how you actually rapid prototype, right? And rapid prototyping is withheld with the entire 27 country EU environment, where consensus is actually only as a unison environment and not even by majority. So that holds back. The other one is about money into the market. So because the market is so, I would not even say fragmented, but held back, money doesn't flow into the European AI environment, and AI is expensive. So 24 times more the US gets into the investment environment in AI than just UK alone, let's say, right? So those numbers are actually explaining the lag. So it's not by surprise, it's by design. Hence, it's actually in the hands of the EU legislation to work with regulations that are enabling the environment, because Europeans are not dumb. They're smart people. They also innovate a lot of things. The problem is scaling it into a business model that then attracts capital and then makes it actually sort of like replicate itself into a market with many contenders, right? Think about Grok, Anthropic, OpenAI, like they're all competing with each other. And you look at Europe and then it's crickets, right? So at the end of the day, this is inevitable. Money is required for this to happen, and legislation around EU privacy of data. Yes, I get all of that. But if we obsess about that and stop anyway this from developing ourselves in Europe, it's going to happen one way or another, and then what are you going to do? Buy the European TikTok version next because your data is out there? Like, it just doesn't show foresight and strategic thinking in this. Very similar, quite honestly, and such as the military complex development in the EU in the last 2 decades. Very similar pattern. So it has to break its pattern.
Koray, good stuff there. Always keeping it real. I really appreciate that about you. Katie, I'm going to give you the final word. Koray covered a lot of ground there. And as someone like yourself that has spent time in leadership roles, doing a lot of work in Europe, anything stick out to you in Koray's take?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a couple of things that stick out to me. He obviously has a great perspective of how government has the influence on industry. But ultimately, I think they just have to take some risk. And it seems like overall Europe as a whole is being a little bit risk averse, and they just need to dive in and be willing to take a little bit of risk, I think.
That's right. And it kind of goes back to what you said earlier. Folks that are, and this, I'm going to make a mass generalization. So don't pin me to this, but folks that typically are not risk tolerant, they really want a perfect solution. Right. And Katie, going back to your point, perfection certainly is the enemy of productivity or progress, I think, as whoever famous said that. And it's so true, because to Koray, to your point, it is about experimentation, especially with new technology, right? Because the first iteration, the 17th iteration oftentimes isn't even, it's just a tip of the iceberg. So it'd be fascinating to see kind of how this evolves and see if Europe can make a commitment, a concerted effort to catch up. All right, Katie and Koray, good stuff here today. One last quick comment on AI before we shift over to Manufacturing Day and some really big events coming up. Leah's got a great comment. Leah says, some companies are racing to incorporate AI without knowing how to leverage it. What are your thoughts on that? Katie, your quick thought first. I think this kind of goes back to, not having a business case. Everybody wants a shiny object, but no real research-driven, data-driven business case. Your quick thoughts, Katie.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was speaking at Shop Talk, which is one of Manifest's sister shows, last week in Chicago, and AI was definitely a huge topic there. And that question came up that, there are so many companies that are rushing to use AI without really knowing how they're going to apply it. And I totally agree. You have to have the business case, and it has to come from the top down. So any leaders that are, rushing to get into AI, I implore them to sit down and make the business case first, because your team is not going to be able to apply it if it's not, strong, if there's not a strong business case behind it.
That's right, Katie. That's right. I had a CSCO once tell me that beyond measuring things in ROI, they measured things on ROE, return on energy. Especially with related to what your workforce puts into any initiative. Koray, your quick comments there on a great point Lee is calling out.
Yeah, I think the industry has that sort of self-inflicted, especially through consultancies and advisories. When you think about the big four suddenly turning from audit into AI overnight and providing insights where they themselves did not have any insights, and guide companies towards a path forward that is more like Alice in Wonderland than actually a P&L on the stock exchange to survive stakeholder criticism. So, and quite honestly, we have to look into the mirror, like the big research firms and all of them, right? Like coming out with like, do it this way, do it that way. And they have no skin in the game. And then it blows up into the CIO's face. And they're like, okay, now I have to retract and really think about inside out perspective rather than the current model of outside in perspective, because there's so much pressure in the market through you have to do this, otherwise you're going to fail. And it's a little bit that kind of hyperbole that's going around. So that's a bit my thought. So advisories that approach the problem with more pragmatism and actual use cases that impact the P&L, and where you say there is a data infrastructure that is not okay with the AI model in between and the processes that we molded. Now you have a data package that is more gold than just waste. Then you have a KPI, right? And ROI, I call it the return on your intentions, right? So right now the return on your intentions is quite negative because your intentions were really bad, but the return on that, your intentions were really good, but the return on your intentions is really bad. So you have to flip that.
Well said, Koray. And it reminds me of when it comes to business cases, and especially the strong need for them in AI, a problem well-defined is a problem half solved. I think it's an old saying, and it's so true. It is so true. Okay, I'm going to hit on this quickly because we got a lot more to get to. I want to celebrate something really quick, folks. We've got, I want to make sure the Manufacturing Day 2025 is on your calendar. We're celebrating this critical global industry every year on the first Friday of October. And there's a great organization called mfgday.com. You can go learn more about this great annual event. You can also join us this coming Friday, October 3rd, special live stream with me, Mary Kate Love, and Danny Gonzalez. Danny is producing a new documentary that celebrates the manufacturing industry here in the U.S. It's called American Makers. So stay tuned on that. Okay. I want to get more into supply chain industry events. Both of y'all are neck deep in some great events. And I want to ask you this. We're going to talk about Manifest in just a second, which is definitely one of my favorite. It's going to be one of my favorite events out there. But I want to ask you both, one of your favorite events this year that maybe not be named Manifest. Now, Katie, you were just talking about Shop Talk. Is that high up on your list?
Yeah, absolutely. So as many of you know, Manifest was purchased by Hive, and as a part of Hive's portfolio, they do 3 Shop Talk events every year for retailers and brands. And one of them is Shop Talk Fall, which was in Chicago. And I had the pleasure of being a part of one of the first times that they've integrated supply chain into their agenda. And let me tell you, the hunger and appetite for supply chain was just unbelievable. Standing room only. It had nothing to do with me, even though, I would love to take credit for that. But it had nothing to do with me. People wanted to talk about supply chain. And, at a conference that has been traditionally very focused on those retailers and brands and, marketing, to see them hungry to talk about supply chain was like very validating for me. And, the Shop Talk crew just did, a phenomenal job of procuring just a great agenda with very dynamic attendees. So it was a pleasure for me to be able to take their stage.
Outstanding. I've heard lots of great things about Shop Talk. And Katie, come on. I bet you were at least half the draw in talking supply chain there at Shop Talk. And that's great to hear. I love to see more and more organizations, events, you name it, shine a bigger light on the criticality of global supply chain for sure. Good stuff there, Katie. Now, Koray, you host events, you're out at events, you keynote stuff all the time. This is going to be a tough question for you. What's one of your favorite events this year?
I mean, I may be biased, but I agree with Katie where we can bring supply chain to folks that will influence our ability to really succeed in supply chain, or where supply chain enables them to succeed is where I feel like most intrigued by. So you can put all the trade shows in a row, and one is better than the other in one aspect, the other one is better in the other aspect. But at the end, it's like this community coming together and you're really networking well over the days. That's more or less the same, right? Where I really enjoyed my time was at GlobSec, of course, being a senior fellow, but same thing at London Defense Conference, like those conferences that bring the other stakeholders, or where they bring you into their environment, and because they want to understand the value chain interdependency, where they want to understand how that will actually drive their decisions or policy making forward, is where I felt like most welcome. Not that I wasn't in the other place, but there was this net curiosity about what do we have to do in our policy in order to enable the industrial base to really support what we want to achieve. And very often, really at the heart of the thing, what they want to achieve is good things. They want prosperity, they want freedom, they want democracy, right? They want the ability for everyone to develop to their highest ability of their own skills. Right. So that is something where I think supply chain has never been in the past and is being exposed to. So we all should pick up, the opportunity to go to those places as well, even though, the argument of like, what do you want to do at Munich Security Conference? What do you want to do at GlobSec? Well, it's right there where the people are that shape the policy that you currently react to, but you shouldn't react. You should respond to their questions and prepare your networks of supply chain for that future. And hence, I think the collaboration event Manifest is so important, because it's one of the biggest events out there, and bringing then the other side to that kind of an event is as equally important. So supply chain events should be open for geopolitics to come on stage as well.
Koray, no doubt. Absolutely. And you shared a lot there. You and Katie both did in your responses. I want to make two quick points, though. That dialogue that you're talking about, I really appreciate what you're doing at that intersection of global supply chain leadership and those that that put together the policy and lead governments and whatnot. And then that brings me to the second point. Yes, supply chains can certainly be used as an instrument of war, but man, the incredible opportunity that exists to use global supply chains as a extraordinary vehicle for peace and global peace and an end to conflict. Man, we got tons and tons of opportunity there, and hopefully we can take advantage of that as we move into the end of this year and what's hopefully going to be a more peaceful 2026. All right, I got to add one more thing. Katie and Koray, y'all both tackled so many different critical elements of the event space. And maybe you did say this, maybe you didn't, but future talent's already making an impact now, and that will only make a bigger impact in the years to come. So I just went to one of my favorite events all year long. It was the 7th annual Wise Future Leaders Symposium at the University of Arkansas. Dr. Stephanie Thomas, who is right here, hosted students, faculty, and industry leaders from 31 schools, I think, across North America. So, folks, if WISE is not on your radar, and WISE is on, I know Katie's radar, I bet it's on Koray's, because Koray doesn't miss anything. Folks, check out the WISE organization. They're doing incredible things. And these students, they're already interning, they're already working in industry. Oh my gosh, you could hook them up to power grids everywhere, and we have energy for days. It's amazing. Okay. Speaking of amazing stuff, Koray beat me to the punch talking about Manifest, Katie. Manifest continues to grow and grow and grow. And one of the really cool things for 2026 in February at Manifest for next year, you're adding a ton of cold chain content. Is that right? Tell us more about that. And is there a trend or two within cold chain in that space that really intrigues you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as always, we listen to our attendees, and our community asked for more cold chain. So, new this year, we're going to have a cold chain pavilion where people can go and be immersed both in, the technology solution providers within the cold chain space, as well as hearing from industry leaders like Mars,
Yeah.
which they're doing just amazing things in the cold chain. And so for me, the most kind of intriguing thing that's happening in the cold chain is this shift from reactive to proactive. And I think it's happening, in other places in the supply chain. But for me to see that happening in the cold chain, so things like AI and digital twins, which are letting the operators predict future failures in the cold chain before they happen. This has provided a huge leap in the resilience of the cold chain. And then things like the sustainability pressures that are driving greener refrigeration and even some micro cold storage closer to cities, I think is having a big impact on the supply chain. And last, on the pharma side. So you can't talk about cold chain without talking about pharma. So the rise of cell and gene therapies is pushing these ultra cold capabilities within the supply chain. And that's also driving new research that are exploring drugs that don't need refrigeration at all. So together, I think these trends are things that you're going to see both on the speaker side as well as on our solution provider side, and it's really changing how we think about cold chain.
It is. And Katie, it's growing almost as fast as Manifest. Get this, folks. According to some numbers out there, the global cold chain logistics market is projected to be around $436 billion US this year. You got some forecasts that expect it to grow to as high as $1.3 trillion as a market size by 2034. Oh my goodness. So almost growing as fast as Manifest. Koray, your thoughts on cold chain, my friend?
It's one of those things that you never really think is so essential until it's actually not there.
Right.
Remember the COVID time and the vaccines requiring the cold chain delivery, and how important that was, and what kind of an impediment that was to scale up the vaccine distribution, actually, right? There are a lot of tech companies, a few that you also work with, that help the cold chain to be monitored and protected. Think about our common friend Kranar with his company,
Right.
Type, for instance, right? You work with them as well. Those things are considered niche, but then you look at the niche and it's pretty deep. Right. And then the associated monetary value to the total addressable market is pretty high. So it's just natural that Manifest picks up this topic, because from food over to chemicals over to pharma, life sciences, this is essential, especially with, like Katie said, gene therapy, really cutting edge research in cancer treatments and viral infections. And quite honestly, the last pandemic was not the last pandemic,
Right.
but it was just one in the row of others, and those events to happen in the future. So cold chain capabilities, from technology to actual pragmatic operations, is key to any economy. And the numbers you mentioned are just foundational, to be honest.
It is. And folks, check out what Kranar and the TIVE team are up to. That's TIVE.com, if I'm not mistaken. I was on a panel last year at Manifest with Kranar. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Amanda, big thanks to you and Tricia behind the scenes today. I think TIVE's coming on a webinar with our friends at Supply Chain Now in Espanol coming up soon. Let's drop a link there in the chat about that. All right, Katie and Koray. Katie, I want to talk about Manifest. So folks, if you love cold chain, you're going to love Manifest 2026 even better. So stay tuned as they roll out the speakers and the thought leaders from the cold chain space that will be confirmed to be at Manifest next year. What else, Katie? I know that you need about 2 hours to answer this question, but what else at the top of your list? What else can folks look forward to at Manifest 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're returning back to the Venetian in February, which is just a beautiful space. And we have a larger expo floor this year, which means more room, not just for more of the innovative technology, but more room to have fun. I think, being in Vegas, people always connect us with those fun opportunities, which for me personally, those fun opportunities have led to so much great networking. It's so natural. You're at a putting green and strike up a conversation, and we're going to have so many more of those networking opportunities. Selfishly, I'd love to talk a little bit about our brand new hosted shipper program. So we've really, since I joined the team 2 years ago, really taken an intentional look at creating value for our shippers. And we've been able to roll out some new travel incentives to attract both shippers as well as the shipper teams to the event. So if you're curious about that, definitely reach out to me. The level of our attendees, both speakers on stage as well as attendees in the audience, just continues to be elevated. Supply chain chief supply chain officers and senior vice presidents and vice presidents are really seeing Manifest as the place not only to connect with their peers, but also to take in the content and network. So we're really happy and excited, and February will be here before you know it.
It sure will. Oh my gosh. Folks, before I get Koray to respond to those cool things Katie just shared, I want to make sure y'all know Manifest is in Las Vegas, February 9th through the 11th at the Venetian. You can't get much more AAA than that, Katie. We're going to be conducting interviews again this year. Had a blast last year. In fact, had so much fun. I think one night I was in bed by 8:30 p.m. It was a long day. But Katie and the team, Courtney, Tanzel, Pam, many others, have done a great job building and growing this terrific event. We're dropping a link right there. We're proud partners of Manifest. Love the work they do connecting professionals from across the globe, and come join us in Vegas. Now, Koray, touch on something you heard there from Katie, and we got to get you there to Vegas and have some geopolitical discussions too. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I've never been to Manifest, so I have always watched it from afar with envy, and so this year I'm really, I would say, motivated to make an effort to come down. Yes,
we're gonna do it. We're gonna make it happen. And this is obvious and cliche. I sound kind of dumb sharing it, but I'm going to anyway. To be able to get out in person and shake hands and sit down and have a cup of coffee again. Yeah, it's been a few years since the pandemic, but man, I don't take that for granted a single day. That is a blessing. Am I right, Koray?
Absolutely. Plus, people change over time, change roles, change responsibilities. The industry shapes new developments, like cold chain becoming such a paradox hot topic, right? So when you think about that kind of development and what's top of mind in the next year or two, I think there is nothing over a personal rapport that you create at an event at that scale and size. And of course, the location matters as well. So because if people go there with the intention to network, it's way easier to start a conversation than if you go somewhere to like who has the more cards to play, right? That's not really about that. So at the end of the day, it's really the balance of the location, the information sharing, the knowledge, expertise that everybody brings. But I always say, whenever you go, you need to follow the rule of three, right? 3 significant contacts you made, 3 significant follow-ups you made, and 3 things that you learned, and 3 things that you should better not have done. So if you have not that 3 things you shouldn't have done, then you didn't live up to what you should have done. So those
taking risks.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Hey, I love that rule of 3. That's a great, folks, don't be like me and go to bed at 8:30 when you're at Manifest. Get out and have dinner with people. And I promise that was just one night. That was after like a 12-hour long interviewing day. But don't be like me. By the way, T Squared says this was great nourishment here on conference information. T Squared, would love to hear you out. What's been one of your favorite events all year long? All right, Katie, we're approaching that time, unfortunately, Katie and Koray, where we're going to be wrapping up here in just a second. But I want to make sure folks know how to connect with you, Katie, whether they want more information on Manifest, how to plug in, be a speaker, sponsor, attendee, exhibitor. If they want to be just part of the Cool Kids Club, how can they track you down, Katie Date?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way is to hit me up on LinkedIn. I have a super easy name to type into that LinkedIn search, and I have a nice red blazer on in my picture, so you can pick me out very easily. And I'd love to connect.
Outstanding. And we're going to make it even easier. We got Katie's direct LinkedIn URL right there in the chat. So check that out. And folks, and again, all kidding aside, Katie, big kudos to you, Courtney, Tanzel, Pam, the whole team for growing a very consequential event for so many across industry. So good stuff there. All right, Koray, I got a two-part question for you. First off, you and Katie dropped some brilliance here today on The Buzz, powered by our friends at EasyPost. What's been one of your favorite aspects of our conversation, and how can folks connect with you and all the great events you're hosting, your perspective that sets the world on fire from time to time? How can folks track you down too? So two-parter, Koray.
Yeah. So the first thing I think is just like learning about Manifest and how certain topics are brought to the main stage, like cold chain. I find that cool. Maybe that's a bit like the nerd in me speaking, but for me, that's just like nourishment, right? Like, to use T-Squared's verbiage there.
That's right.
I have to put that into my vocabulary. So I love that, right? So there is this audacity to bring a topic really to life where the data speaks for itself, but there isn't enough community knowledge that should actually be the main stage topic. So I really enjoy that. And where can you find me? Lately, you can find me at the customer service desk of United at any airport right now, because flights are not going. I'm stuck wherever I go for some odd reason. But if not, then you see my posts, right, about resilient leadership lately, because, you know, I really need to focus that inner energy, you know, in order to come through at the end as a sane person. Sometimes sounds a little bit insane, but that's really, you know, a little bit of that experience lately, traveling a lot. So I'm happy that Boeing is going to produce more airplanes, so that hopefully fly, and that makes travel a bit easier. But yeah, LinkedIn, of course. And as always, the burden on Scott Luton, right? Contact Scott if you want to contact me. No, just kidding. Really, through LinkedIn, it's probably the most direct way.
Outstanding, Koray, or at the customer service desk, as you said. That was funny.
That's right.
All right, Koray and Katie, what a great full episode of The Buzz. Now, I've got one last thing before we wrap here. So I asked T-Squared about one of his favorite events, and he put this one on my radar. Now, this is the National Black MBA Association's nonprofit, founded in 1970 at the University of Chicago. He says this is nothing but nourishment there. How about that? So, folks, make sure that is on your radar as well. Katie Date with Manifest, thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we look forward, keep doing what you are doing. We look forward to connecting with the Manifest team again in a month or two. Koray Kose with Kose Advisory and GlobeSec. Make sure y'all check that out, folks. Koray, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely, anytime.
Big thanks again to Amanda and Trisha behind the scenes, helping make it all happen. And most importantly, T-Squared and Leah and Alex and so many others we couldn't hit today. Thanks for being here, our global audience. You're why we do everything we do. But you've got homework, as always. You got to take one thing. Katie and Koray brought it. They backed up the truck and dumped a ton of great perspective on us here today. Take one thing, put it into practice, share it with your team, right? Do something with it. Deeds, not words. That's how we're going to keep transforming global supply chain. And with that said, on behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton, challenge you, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. We'll see you next time right back here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.